Welcome to Equilibrium Echoes, the podcast where we delve into the transformative power of your inner world on your relationships. I'm your host, Alyssa Decker. Join me as we unlock the secrets of emotional equilibrium and dig deep into the tools and insights needed to foster healthier, more fulfilling relationships in ways that feel safe and authentic. Welcome back to Equilibrium Echoes. I'm your host, Alyssa Decker, and today we're taking a bit of a detour from some of our normal topics into something that I think also will segue very much into what you're used to hearing here on the podcast, which is talking, of course, about our emotional mental health and how that affects our relationships. I have a very special guest today. His name is JD. He is the founder of a mental health ecosystem called Fragile Moments. And JD, thanks so much for being here with us today.
You said very special guest. I feel like extremely humble and grateful all in one shot.
All of my guests are very special. I'd love to just, right here at the beginning of the conversation, before we get into talking more about storytelling and why our story matters and why we should tell our story, I'd love for you to just tell us a little bit about yourself and your background and kind of what it is that you do.
What it is that I do. Well, first and foremost, I'm a husband, father to a 4-year-old and a 2-year-old, 14 and 12, depending on the day. And it really, it always seems like I do a lot, but I'm very, very careful about making it all fit, because I know that our brains just are overloaded constantly. So, as you mentioned, what I love to do is let people know that sharing your story is a powerful resource when it comes to anything really. But in my case, struggling with your mental health, anxiety, depression, things of that nature. And I'm going to say the simple things not because they are simple, but just because those are the ones that are so prevalent. They get more complex as far as how to diagnose them and be aware of them. But nonetheless, still works as far as the same. So I mentioned, founded a mental health ecosystem, which is, generally speaking, a community, is how it started. It's just a way for people to find the next stop on their journey, instead of maybe taking that giant leap that's super scary but super helpful at the same time, which is finding a therapist, or someone more professional than me, because I will not claim to be a professional, nor do I want to be, because that's a tough challenge. But my hope is that it becomes a bridge for whatever the next step is in your process of finding a way to heal, finding a way to manage the world around you. And from that, I've been recently called a serial podcaster because I host 4 shows as well. But again, all under the same umbrella, they are 4 storytelling podcasts. So 4 versions of how to tell your story, basically, from just the general, what you feel you need to share for yourself and to the world to help people connect, to music, being a father, and then the newest one to the library, is sharing what your connection to physical objects are, so keepsakes, and what the memories they hold. Because again, whether you realize it or not, that's a version of healing or not healing if you're holding on to something that doesn't need to be held on to. So it feels like I do a lot, but my brain functions pretty well for doing it all. It's not because you can't multitask. I've tried many times in my life. You can't. So I try and keep it under one bubble, both for my brain and everybody else that follows along with what I do, so that they're not confused and they really get to go, okay, this all has the same message. This is just the version of that message that I need right now. So, yeah.
Love that. So tell me a little bit about how you first became really fascinated with storytelling and how has that kind of played out in your life?
Yeah. So you're going to find out really quick, love it or hate it. This is your moment to eject this podcast right now. I love to talk. I never knew what talking really meant, though. I'm famous for being told both by my parents, by the look in my wife's eyes, and now by my children, that Dad, you talk a lot. And what I've learned over the years is how to make that clear and not just feel like you want to fill in space. I can tell you probably in my 20s, early 30s, that I let my ego be in control of that conversation. Yes, I was still listening. Yes, I was still empathetic. But I know that I was sitting there listening for that moment, like we do for most of us, that I can share something, to the point that now I can hear it in other people. They'll respond to something you said, and you're like, you were just waiting to make it about you. And you were sharing something about your kid, and you're like, well, wait a minute. This is the 4-year-old's turn to have a moment, not yours. This is the grown-ups. And I don't know if I could have done that when I was younger. And my kids have done that to me as well. Mostly the 4-year-old. And when he started asking why, I never was annoyed with it. I never was, that person that you read about, in all the cliche parenting books that it's like, this is super frustrating. Just stop talking. I always knew. And it's because my background is a Montessori teacher. I have a Montessori mother for the better part of 30 years. So maybe that's where it kind of clicked easier for me. But nonetheless, I heard his questions as simply as they are, as just curiosity for the world. But sometimes I would answer and the why would come back to me. And what I slowly began to figure out is that I said too much. And while I was trying to say it in a way that made sense for his brain, I still did too many words, basically. And so I learned kind of how to speak even more clear and more succinctly, to the point that, again, I'm recognizing myself outside of myself, basically, as it happens with other people, that he would ask a question, they would respond, and in my head I'm going, he's going to ask you why. And sure enough, he did. And that's because of the same reason. You said too much. So storytelling as a basis, and looking back now, it's my father's fault. Because what he always used to do, which I think is such a superpower and such a gift now, was something totally annoying when I was a kid. He talked to everybody. And what he was doing was having a conversation. He wasn't that frustrating customer that just was like, they had nobody else to talk to in the day. He genuinely wanted to know about what was going on. And so he'd comment on something very, very prevalent about the person, usually a Yankee hat, because he grew up in Brooklyn. And so, as your son in middle school at this point, at least like as far as I remember, and I have a 5-year-old brother that I'm sure was doing the same thing. We were just like, Dad, please, like, can you just shut up? Like, don't talk to them. Just please, this is super embarrassing, Dad. But right. Fast forward to now, I do the same thing. And I know the reason is to connect with people. So I'll do the same thing with people's name tags at the register. And it's fascinating to watch how much their day changes in that instant when you just say, thank you, Tammy. And all they did was scan your groceries. And I know it works because now my son, if I don't say anything, looks at me and goes, Dad, what was her name? And I'm like, oh, I hate that you just asked me that because I couldn't see their name tag either. And I really wanted to say thank you to them. But that's the power of telling your story at its base right there. It's just the connection.
Right.
And so that's what I love to do. And so, it sounds like talking a lot, but it's become so refined. And I know it because my mother, who's very quick to tell me, you need to just let other people talk, doesn't say that anymore. And so I know that I've come a long way from being the one that needs to fill the space to being the one that allows people to find the direction to fill their own space with it.
So I think that's really fascinating because, first of all, you've tapped into something that we all innately know, even if we're not consciously aware of, and that is that we're wired to connect. From the day we're born, we really are seeking connection with other people. And I love that you are so intentional about that and you're so aware of it, because I think so often we aren't. We just kind of go through our day and it was a good day, it was a bad day. But we're not really aware of how that connection or that lack of connection is affecting us. What have you noticed about that in talking to people and how connection or lack of is affecting them?
I see it, at least in the social media realm. We have all these conversations about what it's doing as far as our attention, what it does as far as when kids are concerned. But to me, it's how little a conversation like happens. And I probably saw it
Yeah.
years ago, at least when I started being more active and being the, the promotion side of having a social media account versus, when I'm 43. So I know when these were social networks, not social media platforms, and that you could just share whatever.
Yeah.
But you didn't have to direct anybody to comment. People just felt like talking to you. And it wasn't, how can I take this person apart for what they shared? To now, you have people telling them in the video or in the caption on the video, take a look below. And to me, that's a huge sign that we just stop looking for the depth and everything. That just look at the like button. You could read something and just, barely skim it and go, yep, that first sentence sounded great. I love it. And if you kept reading, you might see that they were asking for you to expand on that conversation, or what are your thoughts, or anything. And we just kind of blow right past that now. Or if we're not, it's like, how quickly can we take that person apart, as I said, and judge them, or, correct them, or tell them they're a horrible person because they feel this way. Or even if your true intentions and you do want to have a conversation, you're taking what they said and making it into your own words and resharing it as a comment. It's like, well, hold on. Did you acknowledge the fact that they said something beautiful or super emotional or vulnerable and then say something? No, you just kind of were like, you threw it through a word program and we're like, can you make this my own? So it doesn't sound like I plagiarize things. And so we lost the back and forth.
Yeah.
I mean, I see it all the time with, guests on my shows that I simply ask them to do this, is have a conversation. And it's not a bad thing, but, some people look at it and go, okay, so you're not going to ask me anything? And it's like, well, no, I'm not going to ask anything like I have prepared. But if I feel like you're going to get stuck, absolutely. But you can see the panic for a moment, the anxiety kick in, that it's like, oh man, I'm not sure how to talk.
Yeah.
But then 9 times out of 10, 30 minutes in, I haven't said a word and they filled up the whole space. And it's because, you weren't allowed that conversation.
Right.
And so then it expands from that wall of social media to just outward.
Yeah.
Somebody that's passing you in the street or you got out of the car at the same time as the person, and instead of saying hello, you just, oh, excuse me, and they kept going. Maybe it's extreme to add a conversation to that moment, those kind of moments, but maybe how was your day? It pops up all the time, and maybe it's just because I'm super observant of it, but it's just wild how quickly somebody's day can change from just, like I said, saying their name at the register, or when you pass them, if I'm walking my dog and somebody passes me and I'm, they'll say hello to me first, or maybe I'll say hello to them, but you're alone together. Like, instead of making it awkward, just break the barrier for a second, just say hi. And that back and forth right there is gone, but at least from like the comfortable level. But when you do it, you feel like you just let a weight off the shoulder, but somebody else, you have no idea. How many times do we see that phrase? You have no idea what other people are going through. And instead of just saying, hey, how's it going? Hey, man. And then passing, you retrieve that and said, good, hope you're doing well. And like that, you may not even see what happened inside them, but it's like a breath. And like, to me, I don't know, like I love breaking perceptions and changing the way things are by adding that tiny ripple. I don't know what happens after that, but my hope is that they walked away and were like, that dude looked like, you can't see me, but I'm covered in tattoos. I'm 6'1", 180 pounds. And if I'm walking my dog, I'm walking a pit bull. I look like I'm going to be an absolute jerk to you. I know that. And so who knows? Maybe that's the only perception I broke of them. In that moment, they were like, man, I thought people with tattoos were just jerks all the time. And I thought that pit bull was going to eat me alive. And that dog smelled me and he said hello. Who knows what happens? Maybe they walk away and like, maybe the person they wanted to ask out for years is looks like that. And they're like, you know what? Maybe they're not so much of a jerk. I don't know. But it's that version of telling your story in the basis of just a conversation that to me speaks profoundly,
Yeah, but I'm listening to you thinking, like, I think so many of us have gotten to the place where we're afraid of
Sure.
what reaction we're going to get.
Sure.
Like, what if I say something to someone and they're just a
Yeah.
rude asshat to me?
Yep. Yep.
How do you, I mean, you obviously are kind of to the place where you're very comfortable doing this, making connections and starting conversations, but do you ever get really negative reactions? Like, how do you kind of deal with that?
Oh, yeah. The online one I haven't figured out yet. The best thing I could do with that one, because usually it's the thing that I said that like is the least harmless or least harmful.
Right. Yes.
And I come back with, I don't know, what was the last thing I shared that did that? It was something parent related. Oh, I made some comment about, I was at the park with our kids, and I just, as I'm looking around, this has like been months now because it's cold, that's not happening, but I'm looking around, as I've done probably numerous times over the 4 years of having, a child, of how people are just not present in that moment. And wasn't a comment about like, it wasn't even directed as a mom or a dad. I wasn't like, hey, get off your phone, you guys are neglecting your kid. It wasn't anything like that. It was like, it was something simple, like if you're going to be at a park with your kid, be at the park with your kid. And wasn't judging. I have no idea what people were on their phone for. Just a lot of parents on their phone. And man, I got it from moms and dads. It was like, hey dude, like lay off the mom there. Like it might be the only time she has in a day to be on her phone. I'm like, well, then she shouldn't be on her phone. Like, I don't know. I get it. Like there's, your priorities are jumbled and it's hard to, but it was just like, what did I say wrong? And so I deleted it. I was like, I don't know how to do this. Like, I don't know how to do that one, because that to me is like, was somebody sitting on the other end of the computer, like waiting for that word to pop up. You're like, yep, now's my chance. I can just rip this person apart. The best that I can come to reply is just, sometimes if I reply, because really you don't need to, but I'll just ask if the person's okay. Because what was that for? In person, right. It's been a long time since someone's been truly mean to me, because I'm not truly mean to them. It takes a lot, but I know it's there. I'm part Italian, so I know my anger and frustration is somewhere in there. So it takes a lot for it to come out in person. Usually it's in here, in my head, that I'm responding to you. Like I'll say excuse me very politely to somebody if they're definitely like in my way as I'm standing there, and they don't move, and I go around and I'm like, or don't, and I'll say that out loud because I could just feel that I'm just like, what are you doing? Like, I said this very nicely. But it's been a long time since I've had anybody like say that out loud. Like, what are you saying hello to me for? You can kind of just see that people are having a bad day. And I understand, like, if you have a super peppy person around you and you're having a bad day, like, it doesn't care if they're spewing rainbows at you, like you have nothing to do with them. I get it. But it's as hard as it may seem. I think you just always have to kind of keep in mind that, again, you have no idea what's going on in someone's day, and you just might be the last button for them. Usually, and it's true. It has nothing to do with you, unless you were a jerk to them. Then it has everything to do with you. But if you can say to yourself in that situation that you were empathetic and compassionate and graceful, then best as you can, you have to just let it go and realize that was just a tough day and a tough moment for them. And, just your simple hello was like the last straw,
Yeah.
So,
So what would you say to someone who's listening to this and they're thinking like, boy, that sounds really nice. Like, I wish someone would actually talk to me. Like, I would love to have an opportunity to have a conversation with someone and they're feeling very isolated, or like they really don't have a lot of connection in their lives. What would you say to them?
Talk to them first. You're just as much in charge of how the day goes as anybody else in your world. You may not have a best friend or a parent to confide in. I hate to go on the cliche like journaling, but that's kind of what that's for, is at least to say something somewhere. I usually do it as a voice memo so I can hear my ridiculous voice instead of just putting it in pen to paper. so you're hearing that, and that stimulates a whole nother, like, area of your brain. That's why ocean waves are so calming, because it's that natural, like, voice and rhythm of a wave of your breath that's calming you down. So sometimes just hearing that is helpful. But you don't have to be the super annoying person in line that just pokes person and be like, hey, can I talk to you? But there's got to be some simple moment in your day. I don't know. I mean, if you're on hold with somebody, you can feel if you're asking a question, maybe your computer broke or whatever, your bill is way overdue or whatever you're calling for. That person's a human too, somewhere in
Right.
there. If you get to that point, but find something. I mean, even if it's just, something, silly and minute, like, what you said, you were calling from Arkansas. What's the weather there? Something just to help you kind of go, that's okay.
Yeah.
I said something very mundane and simple, but they didn't snap my head off. That's
usually,
really where it starts.
Yeah. Usually when you're talking to someone in customer service, they're kind of paid to be nice to you. So
They are.
it's not much to be
I
afraid of.
usually have it in reverse. I can tell you, it happened recently with our treadmill. I won't tell you the company that owns that treadmill, but a rather big treadmill bicycling company. But my name, well, it was. My name on there had something to do with Jedi. That's just a small part of my world, but he didn't even start asking me like anything. He's like, he read my name. He's like, oh, so I'm betting you'd like a lot to do with. He was a very talkative person, like just, and so it went the other way. I was like, dude, come back this way. I need you to just fix this problem first. We can talk Star Wars all day if you want after that. But he said something because of something that I had that caught his attention on his end, like not even something I said. And so I responded back. I simply just said, oh yeah. I was like, all day, every day. I was like, I'm staring at, as I'm not turning, as you can see this too, at 10 different Legos sitting on my desk right now. It's like, we could do Star Wars all day. And he turned it around. I mean, he came right back to it. He's like, we'll get right back to that. Let's figure out what you need today. It's that versus me going, yeah, dude, Star Wars. Can you shut up for a second so I can talk? It wasn't, I didn't shut that down. So it's that, and it's hard. I mean, I'm going to tell you, like, even just saying somebody's name at the register, because your head's like, I want to bring up the groceries. I want to go do this that I'm ready to do. It's challenging, but it's about as simple as you can get. But simple doesn't mean that work isn't involved.
Right.
It's just, just going with whatever might like pop out of your head, as silly as it might sound, like the barista in line, like maybe they're wearing a button that, like, made you happy, or you realize that the tattoo on their arm is Pokemon and you love Pokemon as a kid. I don't know. As simple as it can get for you. It's the way our conversations like come back.
Yeah.
In a world where you can have a conversation with a robot, we're going to get farther and farther away from this connection. And not to say that doesn't count. If that works for you to have somebody at least respond to you, if you have nobody in your world at the moment, maybe you move to a city you've never been to before and nobody's there, start with the robot, but start, and then it'll open up everything else. You realize this is silly that I'm only talking to a robot. I'm going to say hello to the barista next time,
Yeah.
It at least opens up a gate for you.
So it's, a lot of it is about intentionality.
Yeah.
Is what I hear you saying. Like, it doesn't, I think our lives these days are so structured to miss connection rather than being structured to create it. And if we don't intentionally
We'll miss it.
choose connection and choose conversation,
We'll miss it every time.
very easily too. Like, we can get to the end of the day and be like, wow, I didn't talk to anybody.
I know it for sure. Like, I mean, there's days where if I don't have a conversation that I'm having for a show or a client that I'm life coaching there, I don't have anybody around. My 4-year-old, at least I can have a pretty decent conversation with if it's just he and I, like, excuse me, on a day that I've just picked him up from school versus both of them. But I'll regurgitate all sorts of weird stuff that my wife probably just doesn't want, like, have any interest in whatsoever. That I'll tell her, like, I'm sorry, I know that was just a stupid conversation, and you don't really care anything about, like, technology like I do, but there's what I read today. It's like, yeah, but I know that I didn't have any interaction. And that's, that could just be the day. Like I didn't need to go to the grocery store. I didn't need to get out. But the reason that happens is because you didn't connect, right? Like you said, I mean,
Right.
you didn't even give yourself a chance to do anything. Even talking to yourself again.
Well, I do that.
Yeah.
I think most people do that on some level,
do.
whether they
We do.
actually say it out loud or not.
Yeah. As long as you don't respond to yourself, then you're fine. If you're not, we
Well,
can't label you as weird and crazy.
So, I think one of the things that I've noticed lately, especially in talking to clients, but also just kind of in the real world, is it's hard to make friends as an adult.
Mm-hmm. Oh,
Because for kids, I mean, I look at my kids and they're constantly all day long put in situations where, they're on the playground with a kid or they're whatever, at the lunch table. But as adults, friendship is so vital.
Oh, yeah.
Like not just to the daily functions of our lives, but to our mental health and our
Absolutely.
emotional well-being. And so how do you start taking those conversations from like a quick chat at the park to actually building a friendship? Like what does that look like as an adult?
I have
Without
zero
being
friends.
the weirdo.
Yeah. I have zero friends, so I'm probably the least expert when it comes to these questions, but I'm super aware of that too. And it's by my own, like, omission, as far as like having friends. It's not that I haven't had them like all my life, but I mean, you're right that as you get older, priorities change and things like that, and some, that's just that, and that could be with or without kids. Like you just kind of grew out of that, and that's okay too. But I think it's. So I'll give you an interaction that we had the other day at an indoor pool. This lady, I don't even know where she came from. We were standing in like the kiddie like splash pad pool, and I think it was her older kids that came, flying in there. Wasn't bothering our kids. Like they weren't being rude. They weren't doing anything. She came and like kind of waltzed in front of my wife and I, but she was already talking before she was in front of us. So, and I'm again super observant, and I don't expect anybody to be that way at all, but I could hear her talking, so my light bulb went off, like what's going on around me. I've come to realize she's talking to us. She's like, we don't really like the pool in Raleigh. She's like, but this one's really good. But it was weird. It was super awkward that she was talking, but that's my initial reaction. What was probably happening, what is happening, is that she didn't have anybody else to talk to. She's here with 3 kids, and we'll just go ahead and assume that maybe all 3 of them were hers, and they were grown up. I mean, I would say the oldest looked like she was maybe 12, youngest maybe somewhere like 8, something like that. But if that's all you're talking to in a day and you're an adult, you didn't have anything else. So instead of going, okay, and just not continuing that conversation, I think that's where it starts, is those moments that whatever that is for you, that was my, being a parent version of it, is probably a moment in your day, your world. It's just super awkward. Why the heck is that person talking to me? I'm just here to get coffee. And it's, I say to guests all the time, like, I have no idea what you're telling me is true to you or not. I hope for your sake it is, but say whatever you feel is connecting to other people. Say whatever you might think, because we're so accustomed to having this sensation and feeling that we have to share, like, first of all, everything. That's not true, but the most like profound traumatic thing, and it may not. It could be, how many stories do you hear, like, just in movies and love stories where it's like you were both at the hot dog stand and you both like, you realize you both put relish on your hot dog, and who puts relish on their hot dogs? It's that. Say the thing that's in your head for a second. If it's super weird, then say it, because that'll get you at least be comfortable with going, oh, I don't know, I haven't had a hot dog in a while, nor relish. I have no idea where that came from, but it's that. Maybe that's because it was so weird, because that at least gets you to go, okay, I can just be me.
Right.
And that's the version that you put out there versus I really like Relish. I'm not going to say anything because she's really cute. I don't want to mess this up, and then they're gone. And then you lost that, whatever it is, whether it's like just that moment or the love of your life. You lost that because of what?
Right.
You didn't feel like saying something silly like Relish. Like, it was cool. I don't know. It's that, I think, is how you start building that friendship because until then, you have no idea, what that person is going through, but nonetheless, even smaller than that, who they are, like what things they do and don't like, and you're right. I mean, kids just find the most simplest thing ever, like you could talk about friendship. That's the fun stage. Like you said, your kid's a little bit older,
Yes.
but we have a 2-year-old and a 4-year-old, and the 2-year-old is back around to that whole like friend thing, and constantly, Daddy, I be your friend. Well, yeah, of course. Like, I'll always be your friend. But then if I know it's coming from the other kid, it was like, well, I want to be your friend on Monday and Tuesday, but not the other day. Okay. I want to be Daddy's friend today, but not Mom's friend. And so you realize you have no understanding of it. But like what all they're basing it off of is something simple. Because that kid didn't talk to him today. I don't want to. I don't want to be Jacob's friend today. Why? I just want to be Susan's friend today. Okay. Great. I have no idea what happened, or the opposite of what, if you ask them, you get a deeper conversation. Why? Because that kid, said that he didn't like his blue pencil. Okay. That you've learned that kid doesn't like blue pencils, but they don't know how to take that and go, okay, that's fine. I can still be your friend.
Right.
But we can learn from that as an adult. It's like, okay, you found something out. I like that. And I'm going to stick with this one, but if you never ask, you'll never know. And I think that's one thing I definitely love, like learning about my kids is just, watching them just walk into their world every day and you're like, holy crap. You're like, you have no idea what's going on around you. Like, I just dumped you off in this world of like unknown and here, learn something. And it's like, I don't know. Like, there's days that it doesn't bother me, but days that I look at it and I watch our kids like walk into their classrooms and that's the easiest thing is just to step back. But I'm still looking at it going, man, you just have to navigate, like what the hell am I doing? Like getting uncomfortable about, something simple. And I just threw you into something completely unknown, it's that just being comfortable with that all over again.
Yeah, it's so funny because kids, as you watch them grow up, their definition of friendship changes, the way they interact changes. Like, my oldest is 19, but my youngest is 4, so we're still kind of in that stage. And she, we'll go to the park for 15 minutes, and she's like, "Mom, I made 3 friends at the park," and I'm like, "That's great," but that's great. Like, but you'll never see them again, most likely.
All that kid did was like let you go down the slide first, and they just counted you as a friend. Like, there you go. But it's the same as an adult, absolutely.
But we get so rigid about our ideas of what friendship looks like.
Yeah,
and I guess
one thing you like, but then you're also like, well, they look ridiculous in this outfit that they're wearing to the park. I'm not going to be their friend. But it's like, forget the fact that they just told you that they like something super weird that you like too. Like.
Right.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's so fascinating to kind of watch how they navigate that and how it evolves. Like how my 8-year-old views friendship is very different from how my 4-year-old does. That progression of, but I think there's things as adults that we can definitely learn from that. Like
absolutely.
The way that they connect with the world. We get so inhibited by all of our anxieties and our fears and our
way
social.
Too much.
Yes. And, maybe going back a little bit to that, that curiosity and that openness, really could be beneficial for
it's
many of us.
It's completely uninhibited. And to me, I say that a lot, out loud and, to myself that like, I know too much. Like, is what they're saying, what they're doing really going to be the end all be all? No. Then you need to stop talking for a second and just let them figure that out, versus like, don't talk to that kid. Like, he looks like he comes from a rough background. Like, you don't know that. Like, and they don't know either. They don't care.
Right.
They just saw somebody that they've never seen before. And it's like, oh, they're going down slides too? Word. I'm going to be your friend. But it's just that natural curiosity that we know too much as adults, and we can figure out even more very quickly. And it's work talking to somebody, and we're
Right.
very averse to work in all facets, from weight loss to trauma healing,
Yes.
but it is, I mean, there's no simple pill that's going to fix that for you to be, well, I don't know, I mean, alcohol I think probably does a good job for some people being a little bit more loose, but you could have a soda and all of a sudden feel like the caffeine rush, be like go out and talk to people. I don't know, but there's no simple fix for that. It truly is you just taking a breath and going, okay, they just said hi to me, and I'm gonna say hi back, hello, and go. You don't do anything more that first time,
Right.
just be good with that. But then come back, if it was the person, like I said, works at the cash register, they're going to be there every day of every week, go back, buy another small item, and I don't know. I mean, there's some version for everybody, that
Hmm.
you can push your interaction just a little bit farther. I mean, if you have to compare it, we'll compare it to like a weight loss or exercise program. No one's asking you to do 10 push-ups day one if you've never done push-ups,
Right.
right? I mean, you may have to start on your knees, and maybe even that is hard because your whole body's wobbly, but it's even there, we don't tell people, if you got injured, you look it up, they give you the least amount of time that would fix. And they're not even talking about like what else. Like it's like, oh, it'll be fine in 4 to 6 weeks. No, you'll feel better in 4 to 6 weeks, but it might take a year or more for you to actually function how you were functioning. But no one tells you that. Same thing.
Right.
It might be super uncomfortable to say hello and have a conversation, but 2 months from now, it's not going to be that much easier, but it'll still be easier for you. And
Yeah.
that doesn't mean you have to share everything with some random human being, but at least being okay with, saying something small, and I'm going to go back to what you asked before. Like, if you have nobody to talk to, maybe your interactions are online. What I do when it comes to reading, if I doom scroll, I won't like something unless it's something silly. Like if it's just something like, some, company share that they're now going to, be selling like something that I love. I don't know. Like then it's fine. But if it's somebody's like words or something they're sharing that's personal, I won't touch that like button unless I know I'm going to comment as well. And am
Mm.
I disregarding an algorithm? Absolutely. And they're not going to get those words seen by anybody else, the viral post they were hoping for. Sorry. But at least I know that I'm being, compassionate to what they just shared. So even if it's that, tell yourself that you're not going to hit the like button on somebody's personal post again unless you comment. That'll still give you the same rush. You'll still look at it and go, wow, I simply just told that person, thank you for being so vulnerable. Whew, that's a big statement. But
Hmm.
it's so simple at the same time,
Right. Yes. Very simple things that we can do to offer that
Yeah.
connection to the other person. So, what do you notice in all of your conversations and in your coaching? What happens in someone's life when they have an opportunity to tell their story? How does that affect their mental and emotional health?
It's everything. The floodgates open, and it to me that it's like I was saying in the beginning, like it's become my marker now that I've learned to open a gate and be okay that that's it. Like I didn't say anything else. The phrase that I get a lot is "Thank you for giving me the space to do that." In the beginning, I was like, I don't know what to do with that. Like, thank you. I don't know if that touches exactly, what I just did. It sounds very silly for me to just say thanks for that. But what I've slowly come to realize with that is that there is no space. And it's not because, and I'm not necessarily seeking to give that either. It was simply seeking a story for people,
Mm-hmm.
and not for myself, not for anything, just whatever version you have to share. So I've come to realize that thank you for the giving the space is a genuine, I didn't have anything. My biggest marker is if I could go through the whole thing and nobody says, like, I don't say a thing. Like they were somebody that began and said, okay, well, so just share. Yeah. However it falls out. And I just simply tell you, like, I'll be here if you get stuck. But all I'm doing, like I said, I mean, I don't prepare questions or anything like that. I come with just whatever you're about to spew out, and I have no idea how I learned that. I don't know if that was a class or something that was shared with me when I was growing up. So I mean, I can't give you like, here's the workbook. One day I'll put it all into a workbook once I figure it out. But I'm truly just being that active listener and not waiting for, oh, she just said this magic word, I'm going to hold on to that. And then I've forgotten. I have no idea what you said after that, to the point that you're like, oh, shoot, is this question going to make sense now? I don't. I'm truly just going, and going along with that. And sometimes you can feel when they're uncomfortable, then they're just kind of like rambling. And I'm good about just stopping it and going, so go back to what you said, because they didn't even realize that they said something really important for them. Mm-hmm. But if I don't say a word the whole time, then I just, in that situation, then I feel like I did the right thing, that I truly gave you that space. Or if it's somebody that I can tell is very comfortable and they say something like, that's a really great question, I've never thought of that. Because I know I didn't prepare it. I know that I just spewed it out because of whatever you just shared with me off the cuff. Mm-hmm. So I hit a marker for them, Yeah. So it depends on the person, but nonetheless, it's about the same. They felt like they were comfortable sharing their authentic self, with no pressure, no, hey, this is going to be a really tough conversation. I know it. Do your best. I don't come in with any of that. I know some people like to have that just be the, share the most traumatic thing. That's why true crime podcasts exist. But to me, it's just never been about that. Because I don't know. I don't know what's traumatic for you. I mean, you could be just stepping out your front door could be traumatic, and that's, I could do that every day, no problem. So I don't know. I don't know how that works. I'll give you an example. It's between siblings here. My brother and I are two totally different people with how the world affects us. If you ask him what he needs to do today, if he had to do things like grocery shop or fold laundry or things like that, he will add that to his list, and he will tell you that he can't do something with you because he has to do this task that's going to take him 5 minutes. That will make him pause and go, just can't do with those plans that you want to do today. For me, that's not wrong, that's not bad, that's how he operates. That's what's holding him in his head. For me, I do that every day. That just happens. I won't tell you that, well, I can't hang out because I do have to do, grocery shopping. I'll either try and figure it out or just tell you I can't do it, right? It doesn't affect me because that's just not on my list, the big things. Mm-hmm. But that's I think how a lot of people operate. They're the things that seem mundane to one person are not the other. And I think you just have to be aware of that when it comes to talking and sharing, that when you're listening to somebody and all they told you was that they had a bad day because, somebody cut them off in traffic, and that was a split second and their whole day is wrecked. You can't sit there and be like, well, I got cut off like 5 times on the way to work. Like, I'm still here. You can't.
Right. It's not a comparison game.
Right. Yeah. I mean, sure. That's what we do. Like in your head, maybe just to get it out of your system, but realize that like that could be the worst part of people's day. And you have no idea that was. And you may not, even as a person, you might hear that and be like, fine. Like I wouldn't be bothered by it. And then then it happens to you. And then all of a sudden it's like, oh, I was a jerk to that person because I made fun of them for being upset about something small. And I'm upset too. So you kind of learn both ways, really,
Right. Yeah, you never really know what's behind what's going on. And sometimes that little thing, I think people say these little things because they're testing the waters, sure. To see how we'll react. And the way that we react can very much determine whether there's going to be a conversation or whether that's the end of...
You could have just shut the door on somebody that was like this was... They spent the past 5 days trying to work up the nerve to say this, and then you just slam the door in their face by being rude about something simple, Sure, like I said, in your head, just think that in your head, that like you're foolish for being so upset about, this mundane thing. But realize that to them it's not, for whatever reason, and it might have been a surprise to them too. Like, it's like those whole when you have those conversations with people. What would you do if this happened to you? And you could say, look, I'd be brave. Like, I'd take the gun out of their hand. No, you wouldn't. No, you wouldn't. You know? And I'm not saying that because you're not
until you've been there.
You can't. I'm not saying that because you're not going to be a hero, but you have no idea what your gut is going to tell you in that moment. You know, you could be this, super macho guy, and all of a sudden the most mundane thing knocks you on your butt. And you're like, I have no idea. And that's that right there. It's just something you learn. It doesn't make you anything other than a human.
Right. And we're all that. We're
all a human. And no matter how you want to categorize it or label, we're all just human.
Yeah. Yes. And keeping that in mind, I think about that sometimes. People who get really intimidated by speaking to famous people or wait for hours to meet a celebrity. Yeah. I've never been someone who was super, I was like, they're just a person, you know? And I think that works when you're thinking of people that you admire and respect. And that also is true when you're thinking of people that you wouldn't normally connect with. Like, we're all just humans, and we all need connection. And we don't know what that connection can lead to or what's going on in someone else's life. Back to that idea of just being open and being curious and inviting connection with other people. Such a powerful thing.
It really is. It's like like an unknown healing power, really, in my opinion.
Yeah. Yes, I think being a really good active listener is very much a superpower because so few of us have honed that skill really well.
We're searching for a way to just tell everything. I think that's where I differ from a lot of people when it comes to storytelling, is that I don't believe that you have to say everything to everyone, or one person in general. You do have to be honest with yourself. And like I said before, you may never know if what you're hearing from somebody when you're listening is actually true or not. Doesn't matter. Hopefully what they're saying out loud to you is authentic. Whatever part of the story they felt like sharing, because that could have taken them 5-10 years to just say that small bit, and that's all they want to share, and that's okay, with what's happening. You just have to kind of look at it and go, okay, that's all I'm going to get, and I'm grateful for all that. And I think we get kind of tied up that in order to heal by sharing your story or sharing a part of your life, you have to say everything. I've known my wife for 12 years and been married for 6 of them, and there's still things that I'm not sure if she heard or not. Maybe she did, but the same thing. I think she shared her dad's been passed away for numerous years, and she shared something the other day to our kids. Something about something to eat or something to do. And she looked at me, she's like, did you know that? I'm like, no. And not because I don't talk, not because we don't have a conversation, just never popped into your head. And then it did. And it did to my kids, not to me that I've been with. It's been the person you've been with way less time than me. But it popped out. And that was it. And, you don't have to dive into it. I didn't ask any other deeper questions. It was just, that was the time. And that was when you're ready. And that's what happens to people. Versus what we get caught up in is that it's like, okay, he just said I have to get up on the stage and share everything. No, you don't. And it's not because it's personal story or anything like that, like we like to label it. It's just your story, and you get to choose what part of that. It's just hopefully when you walk away, you're not sitting there saying to yourself, that was tough, but I hope they don't figure out that what I said about that burning bush was not true. Hopefully you walk away and you don't ever have to say that. You're like, okay, that felt good, and I'm glad now that person heard that part of my story, and that's it.
Yeah. We overcomplicate it, and we don't really need to.
We do, but that's the way we are as humans. It's just kind of have to kind of refigure the wiring that was hard done when you were 25. You have to kind of pull it apart a little bit. Get it all jumbled for a second and make sure they're all color coordinated.
Or not, and that's okay.
Or not, yeah, it's okay. Whatever it says, make sure they're connected, somewhere in there.
Right. Oh, what a great conversation. So, JD, tell us where people can go to connect with you, where they can find you on on the online world.
On the
that didn't come out right,
but it's a world that
you know what I meant. Just go with it.
I can't figure it out. I really I've just kind of resided myself and be like, listen, you can tell me what filter and what hashtag, but I just need to share this, and I think that's just a good way for us to kind of start doing, rather than asking the algorithm to follow me because of this reason. Just do it for you and put it out there. And so with that vein, I like to keep things like simple versus, having you like search all over. So you could just head to fragilemoments.org /bio, and that'll take you anywhere you want to go in my world, from the social media platforms to the podcast, to the community itself. Your choice, right? Basically where you want to, like those choose your own adventure. Here's the story, wherever you want to go with it. And I always like to have conversations like this nonetheless, whether you're a guest or not. So I always have I think it's the top link actually, if I remember correctly, where you can just sit and have a chat with me for 10-15 minutes with no agenda, no I'm going to sell you this. It's just that my natural understanding that we should be having more conversations for the sake of having a conversation. I think the last one I had was lady was sitting at Starbucks having a drink too, and she just saw something I posted and just wanted to see the face that posted it. I said, great. And that was it. So, it's as simple and mundane as that. And I think that's a beautiful thing that we need.
I agree. I think that is a beautiful thing. Well, thank you so much for being here with us.
Yeah, absolutely. Anytime.
We will post that link in the show notes. So if you're listening and you want to connect with JD, go find that link, and connect with him, because he's waiting to have conversation.
He's waiting. I am ready to talk, obviously.
Perfect. All right. Well, thanks so much for listening, everyone. And we'll see you again soon on another episode of Equilibrium Echoes. Thanks for joining me for another episode of Equilibrium Echoes. If you would like to learn more about the podcast, visit www.coachingwithalyssa.com/podcast. And while you're there, book your free consultation and download the preview of my new book, Marriage is Hard and Other Lies I Believed. I'll see you in the next episode.